welcome to another edition of The Plunge. And we are just fresh off a Super Bowl finale. And it wasn't quite the ending that Nate and I both expected. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they destroy the Chiefs 31-9. They hold Patrick Mahomes to zero touchdowns. And that surprised all of us. And so let's start off, Nate. What surprised you about this game, and what do you expect from these teams moving forward?
I think I got what I deserved with this one. I bet against the Bucs in pretty much every single game in the playoffs, and they have Tom Brady, and I don't know how I didn't think about Tom Brady being the greatest of all time for this entire playoff run. But I continue to ignore that, and I pretty much got what I deserved. This Bucs team played well on defense. They obviously got to Mahomes a ton. I think he was pressured on 57% of his dropbacks in the first half, at least. He was just running for his life, and the kind of key takeaway from this game is that even in the NFL, you can always see it in college football, but in the NFL, most games are won in the trenches, and this defensive line destroyed the Kansas City offensive line. Mahomes tried the best he could to make something out of nothing on all these plays, and it's a tough loss for Mahomes and the Chiefs. I think looking forward to next season, I expect the Chiefs to be better. They're going to come in with a fresh offensive line. They're going to come in with a renewed passion to actually want to win regular season games and prove that they're the best again. And then moving forward for the Bucs, expect more of the same for one more year. They'll probably be top dogs. Although, watch out for Jameis Winston and the Saints. I don't know if they'll actually be great, but I'm so excited for Jameis Winston to possibly get that starting spot again with Drew Brees gone. I mean, Defensive Player of the Year last year, Jameis Winston. It'll be fun to watch the Saints and the Bucs play in that division all season, but I would say that the Bucs are going to be a top 3 team, even if they don't show it in the regular season. They'll be a top 3 team in the NFC again next season.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, both of us got what we deserved, just like David Jacoby on Jalen Jacoby today, where he had to dress up as a clown because he bet against Tom Brady. Clearly, I did not do that because that's just such a dumb thing to do, dress up as a clown. But anyways, Patrick Mahomes, he ran for 497 yards before throwing the ball or nearly getting sacked. And that's the highest total of any quarterback in 2020. And that's just a testament to show that they really lost this game because of their offensive line. Like literally every possession, you just see the entire pocket collapse on Mahomes, and he just did everything he could to get passes off. And sure, Travis Kelce got his touches, but they were nowhere near the end zone. There was nowhere near any clear opportunity for the Chiefs to really capitalize when they're in the red zone, 2 or 3 times the entire game. And credits to the Bucs defense too, as they kind of held the Chiefs down in that aspect. So yeah, I'm just disappointed in the Chiefs, but they still got a lot of years under Mahomes and a lot of opportunities in the years to come. So I'm not too worried about them.
Don't let this game convince you guys who are out there listening that Patrick Mahomes isn't what he's been advertised to be. Like, man, he was doing some crazy things out there, and I'm not going to waver on my stance of he has the talent and he has the mentality to be the greatest of all time. I mean, this Chiefs team will probably be the Super Bowl favorite again next year, so don't take too much out of this game. They were hurt, they were beat up, and Tampa Bay is a team who is really good, and I doubted that all season, but don't be worried about Patrick Mahomes and where he stands after this game. He's still the best quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, for sure.
Moving on from the Super Bowl, the Kings, they have won 7 of their past 9 games. And what I was wondering is, what surprised you most about this Kings team so far this season?
Well, I think it's probably Tyrese Halliburton and really even just De'Aaron Fox too. Like those 2 guys really have been carrying the team the entire way through their 9-game stretch of winning 7 out of 9. Like you watch Fox the past few games, he scored 34, 36, 28, 26, 38, 30. Like, he's been averaging like literally 30 points a game in the past like 6 or 7 games. And when you watch him play, like he's almost close to that impression of him being unguardable. Like, he's just so fast. And then when you see him accelerate to the rim, the defender is just so scared of him blowing past him that he is just, his momentum is just shifted backwards. And then when Fox gets you on the back pedal, he just stops and has that nice turnaround fade. Like, he really improved his mid-range this year. Like, you just see him turn around fade on like a free throw line jump shot, and it just goes in. And like, man, this Fox guy, like, he really expanded his game in the dimension of just the mid-range, and how he's been just such a revelation to the Sacramento Kings, and especially after their horrid start to the season. Like, people are just saying, oh man, Luke Walton's such a bad coach. Like, what is he doing with his rotations? But, you know, I think they do have a set of really good players, like Harrison Barnes. He's probably the NBA's most forgotten player of all time. But he's been putting up good numbers. He's been really solid for them. And we talked about Halliburton last week in terms of just how like he's just so fun to watch, and he already developed that NBA IQ for the game defensively and offensively, despite the wicked jump shot he has. But even then, like, I'm just so impressed to see De'Aaron Fox just really lead the team in scoring, really carry that team, and I'm excited to where this team is going to do.
It's clear to me that there's two ways to really be an effective scorer in the NBA, and one of them has been shown through LeBron now, through Luka now, like playing at your own pace and just getting to your spots, being smart, outplaying a defender mentally. And then there's just, you're faster than the other guy in front of you, and you get to the basket and you score. And, you know, De'Aaron Fox, he doesn't necessarily play at that calm, control everything type of pace, but he beats you to the basket. And that's why he's been great against all types of defenders lately. Like, Kawhi was guarding him. Matisse Thybulle did a good job on him. They played the 76ers the other night, and he did a good job down the stretch, but he was still super effective in that game. He's passing well. He's finding his guys. He breaks down defenses so much because of that ability to drive. And then you have guys who on the perimeter, like Buddy Hield, who continues to shoot it well. I mean, he's not the greatest player in the world. He doesn't really play make. He doesn't really play great defense, but he can shoot the ball. And then Halliburton, who's that secondary playmaker. He's like what LeBron has searched for all these years, when they were talking about in the Cavs years when he was playing with no one once Kyrie left, and he needed another playmaker. Like, when you're talking about needing another playmaker, Halliburton is the kind of guy you look for, you know? Like, he is I don't demand the ball, but when I have the ball, I can make a play for someone else, and I almost always make the right play. And then you got hustle guys in Rashawn Holmes, and even Hassan Whiteside has given some good minutes at times. Although I think that the Brooklyn Nets should look into Whiteside, because they need a really good, not really good player in the paint. Hassan isn't great at this point, but they need size and they need blocking ability. So I would watch out for that. But this Sacramento team plays together well. Luke Walton, after refusing to play Halliburton, probably their second best player in my opinion, for over 25 minutes a game for the first quarter of the season, he finally was just like, oh, okay, when I play Halliburton 35 minutes a game, we win. So I should play him 35 minutes a game. And so in that sense, it's like, this Kings team didn't play to their talent before because they weren't playing their talent correctly. And now Luke Walton's kind of like, okay, maybe Tom Thibodeau's got something over there playing his starters 38 minutes a game, and let me try that. So I'm excited for this Kings team moving forward. It just makes this Western Conference so much deeper too, because you almost never get an off night now.
Yeah, so let's focus on their future right now. So they're just out of the playoff spot. They're 12-12, ninth in the West, and I'm looking at their stats, and they're last in defensive rating, allowing 116 points per game. And so let's look at their front court. Like, they got Rashawn Holmes, and he really developed that push shot of his, like, a couple feet from the rim, and everyone's saying, like, yeah, that's a legit shot for him now. And Hassan Whiteside, like, yeah, he's the reason why I think Luke Walton wasn't really giving him minutes in the rotation is that the Kings just run at such a fast pace with Fox on the floor, and there's no way Whiteside keeps up with them. And so, what are your thoughts in terms of what are they going to do this year? Are they really going to make a playoff push, or what's going to happen?
Well, I think you kind of have to with this team. There's no real, you're not really building around pieces other than Halliburton, who will continue to improve, but also he's already a contributor now. It's not like he's a project. He contributes on the floor every second he's on the floor. And so in that sense, it's like there's no waiting around really if you're the Kings, because De'Aaron Fox is improving. Buddy Hield has stayed the same for the past 5 years. Holmes is kind of improving, but he's kind of just a hustle player. And then Barnes obviously has plateaued for the most part. So in that sense, you look at this team, and there's no reason not to try and make a playoff push. And then you have to take into account that this is going to be probably what the West is like for the next 5 years. It's going to be this packed. Maybe the Lakers fall off, or maybe another team falls off. But the talent is there to remain this way for the next 5 years. So there's no sense delaying a playoff push. So maybe they go out and try and trade Whiteside for a piece that could contribute now if a team needs a center or something like that. I think this team will push for the playoffs. I don't know if they'll make it, but I definitely said, like, at the start of the season, we talked about it. They're a play-in team, maybe not a playoffs team.
Yeah, for sure. And one last thing. Marvin Bagley. He's always going to be seen as the guy who got picked over Doncic. And this year he's averaging 12.5 points a game, 7 rebounds a game, shooting, I think, 47 from the field, 37 from 3. So if you're the Kings, what do you do with this guy? Do you think he's a lost cause for the Kings, or do you think he really has some potential left to really be relevant in this league?
I don't see him as a relevant player with this Kings team. Aside from, yeah, he'll be a rotational piece. Like, he is talented enough to be a rotational piece. He grabs enough boards. He does enough on the floor. When he played Philly the other night, he hit a couple jumpers. He was playing well against Embiid for a bit. And he does have the skill level, and obviously he was highly touted in university. And he can flourish, but Sacramento is a place where he'll always be relegated to that. You're not the number one scorer. You're not the number 2 scorer. You'll always be kind of a secondary piece. So if he wants to excel, he might have to go to another team where they're devoid of anything at the power forward / center position. So I don't think he'll develop into, well, obviously he'll never reach the heights of Luka or Trae Young, who was drafted after him. But he could be an impactful player in the NBA still. So it's kind of up in the air, but we'll have to wait and see. I know his dad wants him to be traded, so we'll see what happens at the deadline.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so moving on to another low-level competing team in the Eastern Conference. Lamelo Ball, he continues to impress with the Charlotte Hornets. He's been on fire lately after Devontae Graham has gone out with an injury, and he's been starting for the Hornets the past few games. And man, like, his numbers are just going up. And so he continues to impress with Charlotte. Is he Rookie of the Year? And more importantly, where does he rank among the point guards in the NBA?
I'm not going to list out all the point guards in the NBA because there are a lot of great point guards, but I would say somewhere around 10 to 12 at this point. And if you watch LaMelo Ball, his production is so effortless. Like, he's not a great three-point shooter, but he hits threes. He's so confident in every aspect of his game that he continues to find ways to produce and be effective for his team. And since he's been starting, I think their net rating has gone up. Their plus minus has gone way up. They've won more games. And he's just been such a... He came into the league as such a argued upon prospect, where people were like, how much does feel to a game translate to success in the NBA? Because you could tell he had a great feel for the game in Australia. And it's so clear nowadays, like you look at players who have had a great IQ and feel for the game. Even if in this draft, like Halliburton, he had such a great feel for the game. Lamelo clearly has a great feel for the game. Even a guy like Peyton Pritchard has a really good feel for the game. And that translates almost immediately to the NBA because, yeah, you're facing tougher defense, but you're also you're at a point where you understand what happens all places on the court. So if guys are a little faster and guys are a little stronger, it doesn't really bother you because you're still making all those same reads and you're still understanding where the open guy is, where my shot's going to come from. And that's what's so clear to me. Like his anticipation has been great. He's been racking up steals and he is the centerpiece of this Charlotte team. And after all the hate they got in this offseason, like what a weird contract for Gordon Hayward, people were saying. And now you're looking at Charlotte and you're like, wow, this team they've got something. Like Gordon Hayward is one of those veterans. He's like the opposite of DeMar DeRozan, where he does not demand the ball in his hands at all times at all. Like he plays on that perimeter, waits for the pass, and then he operates from there. And that's so good for the development of young players, just because LaMelo is allowed by that franchise to feel out the game entirely. And Charlotte is going to reap the benefits of that for the next 10, 15 years.
Yeah, LaMelo Ball has really shown his floor and his ceiling all at the same time this season, where like in terms of his floor, you look at him and it's like, okay, sure, backup point guard to the Hornets, who already have two good young stars in Rozier and Graham. Good playmaker, athletic, knows the game well. But then you also you have seen like spurts of his ceiling. Like he got a triple double earlier this season, and now he's averaging like I think 6 assists or something. And you see like how like even on the court, like his NBA IQ is just developing every game. And the only concern that we all have of him is just his turnover rate. Like he's averaging 2.5 turnovers a game. And even James Borrego is just saying, like, I can't keep you on the floor if you keep turning the ball over. And so I really don't think that's too big of a concern for him in terms of his career. I think it's more of just figuring things out in the NBA. Like, look, this is his first season in the NBA amidst a COVID season. And so it will take time for him to really navigate his way in terms of how to take care of the ball. And I think, of course, he needs to improve in his shooting. Although he's shooting 35% from three. But when you have guys like Rozier, Graham, and Hayward, and that literally sets the stage for LaMelo to really handle that offense and to distribute that ball to open shooters. And him and Miles Bridges, that duo is insane. Like the amount of lobs that he throws to Bridges this season, and how much force Bridges throws the ball down to the rim, it's just insane to me.
Yeah, Miles Bridges isn't good a lot, but he is a very impressive dunker, and he's kind of got that, like, Zion's a better player, don't get me wrong, but he's got that last year's Lonzo and Zion connection going with LaMelo right now, and it's really fun to watch, and it makes the Hornets like a team where you're flipping through the channels or whatever you watch on, and you're finding yourself wanting to watch a bit more of this Hornets team because of all those explosive players who aren't great players, but they put up highlights pretty quickly. So
yeah, I mean, and people always say like, oh, the Hornets are so fun to watch because LaMelo Ball is in their team, but a lot of people forget Miles Bridges is also the benefactor of his lobs and their highlight reels. Like I think people forget how good of a dunker Miles Bridges is, and even an athlete himself. And I think just the stardom of LaMelo Ball kind of overshadows him. So I think, I think people should appreciate Miles Bridges more for getting the Hornets back on the map of national TV games. So will LaMelo Ball win Rookie of the Year? Is this clear cut for him, or are guys like Tyrese Halliburton in the way of competing against him for Rookie of the Year?
I really like Halliburton, and Halliburton is going to be probably a great player. I don't know if he'll ever be an all-star, but he will be a winning player throughout his career. And that being said, the narrative is Lamelo, the play is Lamelo, the electrifying activity of Lamelo makes him more watchable. And so, yeah, it's pretty much locked up that he's going to win Rookie of the Year at this point.
Yeah, it seems so weird to me to say that LaMelo Ball is the front runner for Rookie of the Year. I think coming into this season, I would think James Wiseman or Edwards even would like actually compete for that number one spot for Rookie of the Year. But now they're nowhere near the conversation. Like you look at them, they're just coming off the bench and just putting up mediocre numbers. So I think, yeah, LaMelo Ball is probably the clear cut for Rookie of the Year this year.
Yeah, it'll be fun to see. I mean, James Wiseman, it's situational for him. Like he is a great player, but he continues to be kind of relegated to that bench role. Well, he's been out for a while, but he's relegated to that bench role just because it's the Warriors and they're a competitive team in the Western Conference. So, moving on, we're going to enter a new segment that we call Big Deal, Small Deal, or No Deal, which basically we're going to run through some topics of the week, and we're going to determine how big of a deal are these topics to these teams or these franchises moving forward. So we'll start with this first one. The Pacers and Celtics fall to around 500. For each team, is this a big deal, a small deal, or no deal?
Okay, let's start with the Pacers. I think it's a small to big deal for them. Just because when you watch them play, they had such a great start to the season. Like Sabonis was just putting like monster numbers on the stat sheet, and Brogdon was just shooting the lights out. But now now when you see them play, Brogdon misses like 13 field goals a game. His field goal percentage just goes down, and I think they really have some good pieces on this team. Like I remember they ran their bench unit against the Pelicans in the fourth quarter trying to make a comeback, and they came within. They were up like 3 or 4 near the end, and they played their entire bench the entire quarter without Sabonis, without Brogdon, and they had the Holiday brothers, Doug McDermott, Goga Batadze, who's like this 7-foot monster. I mean, like their bench is very, very capable of actually like putting up good production numbers. But I think the problem for the Pacers is that they really don't have that lethal point guard or that lethal shooting guard. Like, sure, Brogdon's a good player. He won Rookie of the Year. Is probably the most overrated Rookie of the Year in that draft class, I remember. But he is not really a true point guard. And when you watch them play, they run their offense through Sabonis, and so and Sabonis doesn't always look for Brogdon to get that pick and roll at the end of the shot clock. He just finds whoever's open. And so because of that, you don't really have a go-to offensive threat. I mean, and Sabonis is really kind of a weird guy, actually. When I've heard people say, like, he really picks his matchups, and he plays at the power forward position because Miles Turner's on the floor. And so when he matches up against power forwards in the post, of course he gets those easy putbacks and bunnies. But when you go up against guys like Drummond or guys like or Davis, he really does not have anything in his offensive repertoire. Like, he's a good passer, he's a good finisher, but his hook shot is just so off. And so I think because of that, it is a bit of a concern where you don't have that number one offensive threat. Like, but just because the scoring is just so evenly distributed throughout the entire team.
Yeah, well, I'll move on to Boston then. I'm gonna say no deal for Boston. Boston is a deep team with two of the best small forwards in the league, in my opinion, and Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. Kemba's coming back from injury. He's struggled, and that may be worrisome to some people, but I'm not too worried. I mean, Kemba's a veteran, and he's played a lot of years and put up great stats, and they have Pritchard coming off the bench. Marcus Smart has been out. This team is better than you expect, and so from that standpoint, I say this is no deal because they're going to continue to win games, and they're probably going to finish it with a home court advantage for the playoffs. So I'm going to say no deal on the Celtics. And I'm going to agree with you on the Pacers that it is a small to big deal, depending on when LeVert and TJ Warren return.
Yeah, I think for the Pacers, I think TJ Warren's that guy you need back soon because all he does is just score. He doesn't, and he just has that offensive mentality, just go to the bucket every time. I don't think Karis LeVert will come back this season. There's never really been reports of his timeline, but and that's really unfortunate because you need a guy like LeVert to just really get a bucket when you need him to, because you can't really go to Sabonis, like go post up and get a layup against Anthony Davis, right? That's probably not going to happen. And so yeah, I'm a bit concerned about the Pacers, but they won't slip too far into the standings. So and the thing with Boston, like, I think we've been saying all season, Kemba Walker's probably the X factor of this team. How is he going to play after his knee injury, and is he even still recovering? And also, an underlying headline: Jaylen Brown has knee tendonitis, and I've read a couple of articles on him, and they're saying it's a concern, but I think the best remedy for it is to rest. So I think with the Celtics trying to compete for a good playoff spot, they kind of have to balance that with resting guys like Brown who need that rest for the playoffs. And so that'll be a very interesting headline to look at throughout the season. But yeah, I agree with you as well with Boston. It's not too big of a deal. Brad Stevens is one of the best coaches in the league. He knows how to put guys in the right positions to win. Like Semi Ojeleye, I forgot how many points he scored against the Raptors, but like I was looking at his stats.
I think he had 24.
And yeah, I think the after the first quarter, he scored like 14 points. I'm like, oh my goodness, who? this guy has been playing for the Celtics for like 3 years, and now all of a sudden he just comes up with a 20 bomb. Like, who is this guy? Anyways, Russell Wilson sounds off on the Seahawks pass protection, and teams start calling about him. So is this a big deal, small deal, or no deal in terms of Wilson and where he's going to go?
I'm going to go with big deal. Russell Wilson he has been my favorite quarterback for the past 5 years because I love the Seahawks, and he always had that winner's mentality, you know, like he doesn't care what happened in the regular season. He doesn't care how his team did. When he walks into that playoffs, if the ball is in his hand to end the fourth quarter on a winning drive, it's a done deal. You know, like he never lost. And then this year, he got absolutely destroyed by a Rams team who they had Jared Goff coming off that injury to his hand, and they really had no source of offense, and he just got stifled by the defense. And you can blame that on play calling, on receivers and whatever, but I have this feeling that he kind of just lost his drive a bit, and he has other things he's been focusing on. He's got his podcast, he's got his wife, and they go to all these events together. And to hear a guy like him who almost never said a word come out and publicly complain about this offensive line when he's taking $35 million a year. Like, if you wanted something to change with that offensive line, look at Tom Brady. He took $10 million a year for how many years in New England? Like, you can't be complaining about how much they're not paying the offensive line when all that money is going towards you instead of that offensive line, right? And so, yes, I think this is a big deal because the Seahawks are going to... I wouldn't predict that they'll trade him, but he's not a career Seattle lock like I thought he was. He is kind of giving me that at the right price, he would be traded by the franchise and they would move in a different direction. So this is a big deal, and it's a storyline that the next couple weeks it'll probably unravel more, either in a good way or a bad way for this franchise.
Yeah, I think it's a bigger deal than most people think, and you can't deny the fact that he probably said it's not a coincidence that he said this after the Chiefs lose the Super Bowl because of their offensive line. He even lost himself to the Rams because of their offensive line. So you could clearly tell that it's a concern for a guy like him who wants to be on a team that wants to win a championship and is in a position to do so. And so I think, yeah, I agree with you. It is a big deal. It's a big deal than most people think. So.
Yeah, I'm going to continue to watch this storyline because he's been the face of that franchise ever since the Legion of Boom died. So it'd be a surprise to see him traded. But at the same time, I don't think Seattle's as enamored with him as they have been for a long time. So Moving on from this, Brooklyn loses 3 straight this week with a loss to the Pistons to cap that off, although they won their last game. But is it a big deal, small deal, or no deal that Brooklyn keeps on piling up losses?
I think it's a small deal. Their defense is still going to be as atrocious as it has been. But when you have, like what we said before, when you have Kyrie, KD, and James Harden on the same team, like you always have a chance to win every game. And sure, they lost because KD wasn't here the past week. But the trade deadline's coming up too, so you could, and they have been possibly getting trade rumors of getting a big like Drummond or Whiteside even, and so I think they'll be okay. They will. With the defense that is this horrid, you expect this team to lose more games than you think they would. So I think it's a small deal.
I think it's a small to big deal, just because you can see how much this team relies on Durant, who missed all of last season, and Kyrie and Harden don't really have great chemistry together. They are going to struggle when Durant is out, and that is going to continue to be a trend for the rest of this season, in my opinion.
Yeah. Moving on. The Philadelphia 76ers. They lose to a depleted Blazers team. Is this a big deal, small deal, or no deal, both for the Sixers defense and the Blazers' recent success despite the injury? So let's start with the Sixers defense. Big deal, small deal, no deal?
Big deal. Their team is built around being a tough a tough interior defense, because Joel Embiid is a Defensive Player of the Year candidate, and Simmons can guard on the outside effectively, but he's really good. He's a very talented shot blocker, for one, because he's 6'10" and a point guard, and two, he's really good at moving his feet to stop the drive. So when you have guys like Damian Lillard, even Anthony Simons, Gary Trent Jr. hitting those perimeter shots, it's like Seth Curry's got to guard someone, right? And that's
even Danny Green.
Yeah, Danny Green. I mean, Danny Green used to be a good defender, but you can ask the rest of my family last year would always say how terrible he was on the floor for the Lakers, and I might agree with them. But yeah, their perimeter defense, Matisse Thybulle is an elite perimeter defender, like maybe the best in the league, but he's averaging 3 points this season. So yeah, it's a tough trade-off. If he gets going, then no, it's not a big deal at all. But as he continues to struggle on offense, it's a big worry for this team because they are getting killed on the perimeter. And so matchup-wise, it'll be something to watch in the playoffs as they move forward.
The way Matisse Thybulle blocks shots from behind is just so special to an NBA player these days. Like the way he just has that vision, and even the preciseness to touch the ball and not foul is just so impressive for me to watch. And when you watch the film on defense, when he's guarding the pick and roll, like I think they always drop the big man when they're guarding the pick and roll. And they can afford to do that because you have Embiid, who's a good shot blocker, and also Thybulle and Simmons, who could chase down and recover that fast. But when you watch the Blazers last night, the Sixers gave up so many open lanes to the basket, and I think teams are aware that you can if you have a guy like Damian Lillard who draws doubles all the time, you can draw Joel Embiid to double, and that opens a wide open lane or wide open three for on the opposite end of the corner. And so and then when you skip the ball, you have Danny Green and Seth Curry guarding the other guys. So I think, yeah, Danny Green is just a washed up player. I hate to say it, no disrespect, but and he has been hitting his threes this year, but at the same time, like you just watch him get blown by, like on the ball every single time. And so, moving on to the Blazers side of things, big deal, small deal, or no deal, their recent success despite all their injuries.
I'm going to lean to small deal on this one. I mean, they're a team who's going to stay in that playoff race, which I thought they might fall out of just because you have the Mavericks who should be in the playoffs. You have a lot of teams in that 9-10 spot. Like if the Rockets got healthy with Christian Wood being in, maybe they could make a run. But nonetheless, I think they are a 6-8 team. And it's not a massive deal because I thought they were going to continue to have some success anyways. Like I've kind of been saying, Gary Trent Jr. is a drop off from CJ, but not as big of a drop off as you would tend to think. And then Cantor brings the same offensive profile as Nurkic, and Nurkic wasn't really playing much defense at the start of the year, so they got worse with these injuries, but not much worse. So in that sense, it's a small deal to me because their team isn't going to improve by leaps and bounds when CJ and Nurkic come back.
Yeah, I think when you look at the media and how they see the Blazers after the injuries, they're like, oh man, it's over. Like this team is so trash. But really, when you just look in deeper to this team, they're actually not too far off from where they would be if their entire team is healthy. Like Cantor's a starting caliber player. And when you watch Gary Trent Jr., he's hitting so many threes. I think if we were to have a 3-point contest this year, I would totally advocate for Gary Trent Jr. to be in it, because every time this man gets the ball, he just has the green light every time, and just that just goes to say his confidence. And one more thing about Trent is that his ball handling is my level of ball handling in grade 8. Like when you watch the guy dribble, he's like batting the ball up and down. Like you literally see his hand like moving up and down, like, and his eyes are like literally staring at the ball. And then he just does this like 2-inch crossover and like a 1-inch step back. Like it's as if he's trying to like make something up on the fly. It's so weird, but every time it works and it creates space. So man, Gary, whatever you're doing, it works. Just don't change it. Yeah, but I also think it's a small deal for the Blazers. You still got to give credit to them. Like Dame's been carrying the team. Their defense has been horrible, but they've been finding ways to win. Robert Covington has kind of actually gotten better. Made the clutch play at the last play of the fourth quarter to seal the game. Derrick Jones Jr., good athleticism. Dunk. He's missed so many dunks this year. Oh my goodness. And the amount of dunks that he missed that could have been the dunk of the year is just insane. But anyways, yeah, this team is just, they're still fun to watch, and they're just waiting for CJ Nurk to come back. But like you said, don't expect like too big of a rise in their in how they play and even just how many wins they get. So moving on to our last segment, which is kind of new. We're just gonna list a winner and a loser from this week in sports. So let's start with the winner. So Steph Curry, Nate, why don't you talk about him? He's been averaging 30 points a game this season, and he's back in the MVP race this season after a bad start.
A lot of people have been talking about how Kevin Durant robbed us of prime Steph Curry, and I would absolutely agree with that, because Steph Curry is the most fun player I've ever watched in my entire life. He brings so much energy. It's like you can be watching a Warriors game and you could think that there was a full crowd in that building just because his teammates are flipping out. He just brings such an excitement to the announcers, and everyone in the building just feeds off of it. And so Steph Curry, big winner, back in that MVP race, and he's got the Warriors as not the best team in the West, but maybe the most fun to watch.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it just he is not dropped off at all in terms of his career. He's still in his prime, like he said. Dropped a 40-piece last night against the Magic. I think just the way he shoots the ball, it's a game changer. And just watching him play over the past couple of games, yeah, he scored 40, 32, 32, 57. And so, yeah, our clear winner of the week has to go to Steph Curry. And the Warriors, they're winning a lot this week, so credits to them.
Yeah, players who have scored hit more than 10 threes in NBA history. 17 games for Steph Curry, 5 for Klay Thompson in second place. So moving on from that, we got our loser of the week. And I'm going to hand this one off to you, but we are going to name the most pitiful franchise of the week in the Houston Texans.
I saw a tweet earlier today. Someone said the Houston Texans will not be allowing any fans next year, and that's not because of COVID, but it's because they're the Houston Texans. that's just so funny, and that's just such a great summary of just their downfall and how they just imploded this year, where you just lose so many guys in their prime, starting with DeAndre Hopkins, and then Deshaun Watson wants out, and now J.J. Watt wants to be released, and they part ways with the Texans, and it's like, oh my goodness, what the heck happened to this team? They're probably going to be in the basement in the NFL next year, and so, and it is unfortunate because Deshaun Watson was looking to be your franchise player, with the guy in J.J. Watt who's still got some game left in him. And I think once you lost Hopkins, that was probably that, like I said, it was the start of the dominoes just kind of falling down and just really led to the implosion of this team.
Yep. Just remember, when you look at this Texans team who lost the face of their franchise in Watt and the quarterback, a top 5 quarterback of the future in Watson, that 1 year ago or about 1 year ago, they were up 24-0 on the Chiefs.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. So, yeah, it was fun to have these little segments. We'll be sure to keep these around, of course, in the upcoming episodes. But other than that, that's all we got for this week's episode of The Plunge. Let us know if you have any questions. And until next time, we'll see you next episode.